There are battles in life you win not by speaking, but by staying silent. Sometimes, real power isn't in your response, but in your quiet trust. In a world that teaches us to always speak up, defend ourselves, and respond to every insult, every accusation, and every injustice, there exists a different kind of strength, a quiet strength. One that doesn't scream, doesn't argue, and doesn't seek revenge, yet stands firm while the storm rages. It's the kind of strength that knows when to be silent, not out of fear, but out of trust in a higher power. That kind of silence is not weakness, it's spiritual strength. The Bible says in Exodus 14:14, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." That's a powerful promise. God isn't calling us to strive, to stress, or to shout. He's calling us to trust. When the children of Israel stood at the edge of the Red Sea, with Pharaoh's army closing in behind them, they panicked, just like many of us would. But Moses told them something that didn't make sense. Stand still. They wanted to run, to react. But God was saying, don't move, don't speak. Let me show you what I can do. And in that silence, God parted the sea. When we choose to stay silent, we're not pretending we don't feel pain or see injustice. We're choosing to rise above it. We're choosing to place the battle in the hands of the one who sees all, knows all, and judges righteously. That's not weakness. That's faith. That's strength from heaven. The world says, prove yourself. But God says, be still. The world says, shout back louder. But God says, hold your peace. And the more you trust God, the less you feel the need to explain yourself to people. Because when God fights for you, you don't have to raise your voice. You just have to raise your faith. I know there are moments when your heart is breaking and everything inside you wants to respond. When people lie about you, misunderstand you, or treat you unfairly, you want to defend yourself. That's human nature. But let me tell you something. Nothing shakes the enemy more than a believer who chooses silence, who chooses prayer over panic, peace over pride. You don't need to respond to every critic. You don't need to correct every rumor. That's not your battle. That's God's. And every time you hold your tongue, every time you stay calm when you have every right to explode, heaven takes notice. God sees your restraint. He sees your heart. And he will reward you openly for what you endured quietly. Jesus stood silent before his accusers. They slapped him, spat on him, mocked him, and he said nothing. Not because he couldn't, not because he lacked power, but because he was surrendered to the will of the Father. He didn't come to win in the eyes of men. He came to win the victory over sin and death. And that victory required silence, humility, obedience. If the Son of God could remain silent while innocent, you and I can learn to be silent when misunderstood. If he could stay composed when falsely accused, we can stay composed when others talk behind our backs. Because our identity is not found in their words, but in his word. But in those moments, remember whose you are. Remember that your identity is not defined by the accusations of others, nor by the shifting opinions of the crowd. You are rooted in something deeper, something eternal. You belong to the one who knows you completely, who sees every wound, every tear, every silent struggle, and still calls you beloved. When you walk in that truth, you begin to realize that your peace is too precious to be surrendered at the feet of every offense. Often, the battles we fight are not really about us. They are about what God is producing within us. Patience, endurance, character. These are forged not in comfort but in adversity. When the world throws stones, our natural instinct is to build walls. But God invites us to build altars instead, places where we can lay down our anger, our pride, our need to be understood. In exchange, he offers us the peace that passes understanding, the kind of peace that stands guard over your heart when chaos surrounds you. It is in those quiet moments of surrender that we discover the true meaning of strength. Not the strength to overpower, but the strength to overlook. Not the strength to speak louder, but the strength to listen deeper, to the gentle whisper of God assuring us, "You are mine." That whisper is more powerful than any shout of accusation because it comes from the one whose word is unbreakable. As you continue to walk through seasons of misunderstanding or rejection, let your calm be your testimony. Let your silence be filled with faith. You don't have to answer every critic. You don't have to chase down every rumor. God's favor on your life will speak for itself in due time. The truth always rises, just as the dawn follows the night. So when you feel misunderstood, overlooked, or unjustly treated, breathe deep. Hold your head high, because your worth was never in question. Your name is safe in the hands of the one who holds eternity. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to be vindicated in every situation. Your defender sees all, knows all, and in his time, he will make things right. Let grace be your response. Let love be your legacy. The world may say you're weak for not fighting back, but heaven will call you strong. You are not called to live at the mercy of people's opinions or the chaos of every conflict. You are called to live anchored, steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. So keep moving forward. Keep your heart soft and your spirit open. Choose stillness over striving, peace over proving, faith over fear. God is not only with you, He goes before you. And when you trust Him to fight your battles, you will see victories that your words alone could never achieve. Rest in His promises. Trust in His timing. And above all, remember that you are covered, cherished, and chosen. Nothing anyone says or does can change that. Stand firm. Be silent when needed. And let your quiet confidence declare to the world that your hope is not in circumstances, but in the unshakable love and power of God. But sometimes the higher road is the quiet road. Sometimes God says, "Let me defend you. Let me handle what they said. Let me reveal the truth in my time." There are moments in life when silence becomes your shield, not because you're afraid, but because you've learned to listen more than you speak. You've learned to pause before you act, and when you do that, you're not just protecting the peace around you, you're preserving the peace within you. That kind of discipline doesn't come from the flesh, it comes from walking closely with God. Right now, there are people watching you, watching how you carry your pain, how you deal with betrayal, how you respond to gossip, how you walk through disappointment. And they're not learning from your words, they're learning from your attitude. They're learning what faith looks like in real life. And if you can carry yourself with dignity, if you can walk through the fire without shouting, without breaking down, you're giving them a glimpse of something eternal. Proverbs says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." That one verse could save your peace, your reputation, and your purpose, if you let it. Because not every battle is yours to fight. Not every insult deserves your energy, and not every offense needs an answer. Don't let the enemy pull you into arguments and accusations. Don't let him bait you into forfeiting your peace. That's his tactic. He wants you bitter. He wants you reactive. He wants you so distracted by offense that you lose sight of your calling. But God is calling you higher, to maturity, to grace, to a kind of inner calm that only comes from being in His presence. And let me tell you something. When you stay calm under pressure, when you walk in quiet strength, when you refuse to let offense take root in your heart, God sees it. Heaven honors it. And in His time, God will lift you up. You may not always get the last word, but you don't need it. Because the only word that truly matters has already been spoken. The word says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." It says, "Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." So walk with quiet confidence. Let your silence speak louder than any defense. And remember, what you choose not to react to reveals how far you've grown. There is a kind of peace this world can't give, and it's the same kind of peace this world can't take away. It's not found in everything going smoothly. It's not found in applause, approval, or even in the absence of trouble. It's found in the deep, unshakable knowing that no matter what's happening around you, God is still in control. And that peace, my friend, isn't just comfort. It's a weapon. When everything is falling apart, and yet your spirit remains calm, that's spiritual warfare. That's when the enemy starts to panic, because he expects you to lose your mind. He expects fear, anger, confusion. But when you hold your peace, when you act like you're unbothered, not because you're numb, but because you're anchored, your silence becomes a roar in the spirit. It says, "I trust God more than I fear the storm." You may not feel it right away, but peace is one of the most powerful forces you can carry. Not just peace with others, but peace within. That quiet stillness, that calm in the chaos, that's where the Holy Spirit moves. That's where breakthroughs begin. That's where chains start breaking, not in noise, but in peace that whispers, "God is here." You don't have to fall apart just because everything else is. The enemy will try everything to shake you. He works through confusion. He triggers emotions. He whispers lies. He stirs up drama. And if he can't destroy you outright, he'll try to steal your peace. Because once your peace is gone, your defenses are down. Once your heart is troubled, once your mind starts racing, once your emotions take the lead, you're no longer operating in God's authority. But the moment you say, "I will not be shaken," even when everything around you tells you otherwise, that's when you walk in spiritual authority. Because peace isn't passive. Peace is power under the Spirit's control. Peace says, "I may not know what's next, but I know who holds tomorrow." Peace says, "I might be surrounded, but I'm not alone." Peace says, "Let the world rage. I'm standing on the rock that cannot be moved." Paul wrote in Colossians 3:15, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts." He didn't say, "Let your emotions rule." He didn't say, "Let your fear rule." He said, "Let peace rule." Let it take charge. Let it lead your heart. Let it steady your mind when the winds of life try to knock you over. And listen closely. This kind of peace isn't about pretending. It's not about putting on a fake smile while you're breaking inside. It's not about denying the pain. It's about walking through that pain with a Savior who never lets go. It's crying, yes, but not collapsing. It's grieving, yes, but never giving up. Because your peace isn't built on circumstances. It's built on Christ. And Christ never changes. There will be days when the enemy tries to rob you of your peace. He'll use people. He'll use pressure. He'll use problems that show up out of nowhere. But you've got to remember, peace doesn't come from this world. It's a gift from God. Jesus said, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives." That means no one can take it unless you hand it over. No situation can steal it unless you surrender it. So when life comes at you hard, don't just react with emotion. Respond with peace. Stay grounded. Stay steady. And when people ask, "How are you still so calm?" you'll smile and say, "Because I know my Redeemer lives. Because I've seen what God can do. Because I've walked through storms before, and I didn't make it through by chance. I made it through by grace." The most powerful testimony you may ever share is how you carry yourself when the battle is raging, when others are falling apart, and you're still standing, still smiling, still believing. That kind of peace speaks volumes. People will want to know where it comes from, and you'll get to point them to the one who calms the winds and waves with just a word. That's why your peace matters. That's why your silence matters. Because every time you stay composed, not from denial but from divine trust, you're declaring, God is still on the throne. You're fighting without swinging a fist. You're winning without saying a word. You're overcoming, not by might, but by the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. And sometimes, that peace is the only answer you'll ever need. There is something powerful about restraint, about keeping your head low when your pride wants to rise. In a world built on reaction, silence becomes your secret weapon. And when you choose silence, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, you come under God's covering in a way that no enemy can reach. Sometimes God doesn't want you to respond. He doesn't want you to defend yourself, to explain, or to prove your worth. He simply wants you to be still. Not because you're weak, but because He is about to speak on your behalf. And when God speaks, when God moves, when God judges, your voice isn't needed. His judgment is final. His timing is flawless. His justice is always right. And yes, in those moments you might feel invisible. You might feel like they got away with it, that they hurt you, mocked you, misunderstood you, and kept walking like it meant nothing. But let me remind you, no pain escapes the eyes of the one who sees it all. No injustice slips past the judge of the earth. And when you keep your mouth shut, when you carry your pain with quiet dignity, heaven leans in closer. Because silence in suffering isn't weakness, it's faith in motion. Too often, we ruin our own peace by trying to control outcomes. We try to fix what only God can fix. We argue with people who never plan to understand us. We try to explain ourselves to people who already made up their minds. But you don't have to waste your breath convincing anyone of anything. Because when God vindicates you, He does it in a way no argument ever could. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused in Egypt, thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit. And yet, Scripture never says Joseph tried to defend himself. He didn't plead with his brothers. He didn't protest against Potiphar's wife. He didn't shout about the injustice of the prison system. Instead, he kept his spirit steady and his focus upward. And in God's time, not only was he released, he was raised. From a prison cell to a palace, not because of what he said, but because of how he endured. When God sees you holding your tongue in the middle of betrayal, He takes note. When He sees you choosing not to argue, not to gossip, not to curse the very ones who wronged you, He takes it personally. You might not see the result right away, but hear me. Silence in the hands of God becomes evidence in His court. People will misunderstand you, that's a fact. They'll twist your words. They'll question your motives. They'll create meanings around your silence that don't reflect your heart. Let them talk. Let them assume. You're not living for their approval. You're not here to prove your innocence to men. You are here to walk in obedience to God. Let your integrity be your defense. Because integrity speaks even when you don't. The way you carry yourself, the way you endure mistreatment, the way you choose not to repay insult for insult, that testifies louder than any sermon. That speaks of your walk with God. Anyone can talk. Anyone can fight back. But it takes a surrendered heart to stay silent when everything inside you wants to scream. Sometimes, silence is your yes to God. It's your way of saying, Lord, I trust you more than I trust my own words. I believe your timing is better than my reaction. I know you can handle what I cannot. And in those moments, even if you feel like you're losing, you're not. You're winning in the Spirit. You're storing up favor. You're walking a path that leads straight into the place God prepared for you. Don't worry about what they said. Don't panic if they misunderstood you or if they told the story all wrong, because God sees the full picture. And when He steps in to set it right, He won't need your commentary. He'll speak, and everything hidden will be exposed. Everything broken will be restored, and everything you thought you lost in silence, He will return with interest. You're not called to fix it all. You're called to be faithful. You're not expected to carry every burden. You're called to cast it on Him. And when you stay silent in the face of adversity, you're saying, this is too big for me, but it's not too big for you. So walk in peace. Hold your head high. keep your soul quiet. Because the one who called you isn't deaf to your tears, and he's not blind to your pain. Stay in your lane, stay in position, and let him vindicate you in his way, in his time, and for his glory. And when he does, no voice on earth will be able to deny what your silence already proved. There's something God is developing in the silence, something he's forming in your spirit. Because when the room goes quiet, when the calls stop coming, when the crowd disappears, it's not punishment. It's preparation. When the world falls silent around you, that's often when heaven starts speaking the loudest within you. God often does his greatest work in the quiet seasons, in those hidden places where you feel unseen, unheard, overlooked. But it's in that stillness that he refines you. He's clearing distractions. He's getting you ready. God is stripping away your need for human validation. He's showing you that his voice is enough, his presence is sufficient, and his plan for your life doesn't rely on anyone else's applause. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew to solitary places. It wasn't because he didn't love people. It was because he understood something profound. The strength to walk in public comes from what happens in private. The victory isn't found in the spotlight. It's secured in the silence. Some of you have been asking God, why have I been left out? Why didn't that door open? Why did they walk away? But God is saying, I pulled you back because I'm preparing you for what's ahead. I separated you not to harm you, but to sanctify you. In the silence, your motives are tested. In the silence, your heart is revealed. Because when no one is clapping, when no one is calling, when no one sees you, will you still be faithful? Will you still pray? Will you still believe? That kind of faith doesn't need an audience. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. That's why the silence matters. That's why you have to let God do what only he can do in that quiet space. Let him strip away the noise. Let him quiet the inner chaos. Because sometimes we don't even realize how loud the world has become inside us. And when it finally goes silent, that's when you begin to hear his whisper again. That's when you begin to remember who you are. Not who they said you are, not who your past tried to label you, but who God called you to be. And that identity, your true identity, can only be shaped in the secret place. That's where roots grow deep. That's where conviction is forged. That's where calling is confirmed. Not in the applause, not on the platform, but in the silence, where God becomes your only audience. Now, that silence can feel heavy. It can feel like you've been forgotten, like your prayers are hitting the ceiling, like the breakthrough will never come. But listen, God does not waste silence. He doesn't ignore the cries of his children. He's not absent in your waiting. He's working. And sometimes what he's building in you is far more important than what you're asking him to bring to you. You're asking for a platform. He's building your character. You're praying for recognition. He's shaping your integrity. You want the opportunity, but he's preparing your heart to carry it well. Because if he answered every prayer too soon, you might collapse under the weight of what you weren't ready for. That's why the silence matters. That's why you must not despise it. It's the proving ground for the next level of your purpose. So don't run from it. Don't rush out of it. Let the silence do its work. Let it refine you. Let it strengthen your spiritual muscles. Because when the silence lifts, and it will, you'll come out different, stronger, rooted in truth, less shaken by emotions, ready for what's next. You'll be able to stand firm when the storm comes, because your foundation wasn't built on noise. It was built on quiet trust in God. And when that moment comes, when God calls you out of the shadows and into the light, when he opens doors no man can shut, you'll know it wasn't because of your striving. It was because of your surrender. It wasn't your performance. It was his process. And every silent, faithful step you took, it wasn't wasted. It was necessary. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep showing up in the quiet, because God isn't finished with you. And in the silence, He is preparing something greater than you can imagine. And when it arrives, you won't have to announce it. Your silence will have already spoken. There comes a point where you must learn to walk with quiet strength, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand. Not every battle is yours to fight. There is deep wisdom in knowing when to speak, and when to simply carry yourself with dignity and peace. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to say nothing, to keep your head high, your heart pure, and your feet moving forward. We live in a world that thrives on reaction. It pushes you to speak fast, defend loudly, match insult with insult, and prove yourself to people who were never qualified to measure your worth. But God hasn't called you to live reactive. He's called you to live grounded, not ruled by the chaos of others, but led by the stillness of His Spirit. And when you walk in that stillness, when you keep your peace while everyone else is losing theirs, you're not backing down. You're rising above. Don't let the noise of this world drag you into empty battles. Don't let someone else's chaos pull you out of your character. Just because they're loud doesn't mean they're right. Just because they provoke you doesn't mean you need to respond. Your silence can be your shield. Your calm response can be your crown. And your ability to carry on as if your peace is untouched, that's not ignorance. That's wisdom dressed in strength. Because when the enemy can't destroy you, he'll try to distract you. He'll throw confusion in your path, stir up people around you, twist words, all with one goal, to provoke a reaction from you. But the moment you engage, the moment you lower yourself to fight battles God never assigned to you, you waste time, energy, and peace. Peace that could have been invested in building the life He actually called you to. You are not responsible for what people say about you. You're not responsible for how they see you, what they assume, or how they twist the truth. You are responsible for one thing: how you respond. And sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because you're afraid, not because you don't have the words, but because you've learned to trust the one who sees it all, hears it all, and judges righteously. Silence isn't weakness. It's discipline. It's restraint in the presence of the one who holds your future. When you choose silence over retaliation, you're saying, God, I trust you to handle this better than I ever could. And let me tell you, He always does. What God does in your defense will speak louder than anything you could ever say. Think of Jesus as He stood before His accusers, the lies, the false accusations, the shouts. But He stood silent, not because He was defeated, but because He was destined. He didn't need to defend Himself, because truth doesn't need defense when it stands with God. And if Jesus could remain silent when He had every right to speak, then so can we. Not because we're strong on our own, but because we are surrendered to something higher. And ultimately, that's what it's about: purpose. You can't fulfill your purpose while being distracted by people who don't understand your calling. You can't move forward if you're constantly explaining yourself to those who never intended to listen. Let them think what they want. Let them say what they will. But you, keep walking, keep building, keep praying, keep serving, keep growing. Let your fruit speak for itself, because that's what silence does. It allows your life to do the talking. It lets your consistency speak where your words no longer matter. It proves you belong to something bigger than opinions, bigger than noise. You belong to a kingdom. And that kingdom doesn't scream for attention. It reigns in quiet authority. You are a child of that kingdom. You don't need to step into every argument. You don't need to explain every move. You just need to walk in peace, trusting that what God has started in you, He will finish, with or without anyone's approval. And when the time is right, when the season shifts, when the promise is fulfilled, those who watched your silence will witness your reward. Those who doubted you will see the favor you carried, and those who tried to bring you down will realize they were up against someone covered by the hand of God. So don't be shaken by the noise. Don't get pulled into the drama. Don't let the chaos around you stir up chaos within you. Stand firm. Be still. Act as if nothing disturbs your peace, because deep down, you know. Your greater is greater than every lie, every attack, and every storm. And the peace that comes from walking in that truth will be your greatest testimony.